Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
Real Madrid looked ready to cause an upset yet again when they went ahead through Vinicius in the first half and threatened to add more, until Kevin De Bruyne stepped up to make it 1-0 in the first leg. It was a messy match that ebbed and flowed, but how Ancelotti disrupted the City build-up was quite impressive. So what exactly were the tactics from Pep and Ancelotti? Let's take a look, beginning with City on the ball. Real Madrid knew that if they played in their default defensive shape, there was the danger of this occurring, as City liked to use its midfield box so that they had a 4 versus 3. So Real Madrid had to be much more aggressive than usual in the press to prevent this situation from occurring in the first place as much as possible. This is because, by pressing high and preventing City from building up easily, Stones had to begin deep, at least initially, and that would mean rather than pushing up early to be the second pivot alongside Rodri, instead what we would see is Gundogan having to drop in to help the build-up instead, as only keeping one midfielder deep would be too easy to tie up. This would then be backed up by Valverde and Modric looking to press the City double pivot, and what this would now mean is that Kroos could stay closer to De Bruyne where he was looking to explore the spaces between the lines. So now they had kept Stones deep, meaning that in the midfield they could remain man-to-man rather than overloaded. So here we see it from a goal kick situation, where Benzema is on Stones, forcing him to remain deep, whilst Rodrigo is ready to apply pressure onto Diaz, meaning that Modric and Valverde can worry about the deeper City double pivot, and Kroos tracks De Bruyne higher. But this was a philosophy Real Madrid kept in open play situations as well. Again, the high press from Benzema on Stones prevents Stones from moving up as a second pivot, meaning the City double pivot is picked up and De Bruyne cannot be found between the lines too easily. So what it meant is that at times, City would have to go longer, but City still tried to find midfield advantages, and this was, rather than keeping De Bruyne and Gundogan on opposite half spaces for the entire 90, what we often saw was De Bruyne coming across to the left in order to try and create an overload against the midfielder, as if Kroos was to follow all the way, there was potential for Haaland to be found between the lines, which we did see. But De Bruyne could also look to receive in these deeper areas, as he knew that Rodrigo could be higher on Akanji and Gundogan was tied up by Valverde, so this would present an opportunity for progression, although this wasn't as effective as City's usual build-up. So here we see Gundogan is being tied up by Kroos and Rodrigo is looking to move onto Akanji, and De Bruyne spots space in behind Rodrigo where he could potentially receive. And he does just that, giving him the opportunity to progress into space. But City were at times able to work their midfield box if they got past the first wave of pressure. However, with Benzema often picking up Diaz, it meant that Walker and Akanji were often the outlet options, and Real Madrid were comfortable pressing these wider centre-backs as they were the weaknesses during the build-up phase. So if Akanji got onto the ball, Rodrigo would be quick to press, and the same would occur on the other side with Vinicius and Walker. The wingers were confident in pressing because they knew that the only wide outlet option would be a winger dropping deeper to provide an option. And Real were hyper-aggressive with both of their fullbacks who would look to drop with their man to prevent them turning and facing the goal, and were willing to commit fouls to slow down the play when it was necessary. And this may be one of the weaknesses at times of this City shape, as if the wingers don't win their 1 versus 1 battles, things could get bogged down out wide. Akanji receiving is the trigger for Rodrigo to press, and Akanji's not great under pressure, whilst at the same time, his automatic option in Grealish is tied up. However, when City did manage to get into the midfield with this box, they had their successes and failures at times. If Real were defending in this default shape, we often saw City looking to create isolations, particularly with Bernardo against Camavinga. And although a lot of the time Camavinga was able to force Bernardo to play backwards, there was always the opportunity for the runs between the centre-back and the full-back by De Bruyne. For the most part, these weren't found, but on the rare occasions they were, City looked really dangerous. Gundogan and De Bruyne are high in the half spaces in this scenario, and Stones looks to make the pass to Bernardo to create an isolation. And he manages to do just that, drawing Camavinga, but on this occasion, De Bruyne made the most of the space and the first time pass was quick enough so that he could be found, leading to a decent shooting opportunity. But Real have come up against shapes like this plenty, and the intelligence of their players allows them to quickly adapt. One way this could be done is accepting that City had gotten past the first phase of pressure, and instead dropping Valverde deeper into the right-hand half space, which would then allow them to temporarily form a back three, whilst the midfield was still somewhat 2 versus 2, as the wider centre-backs could focus on their men. And this would make that half space run much easier to track from Real Madrid, while still having that 2 versus 2 in the midfield. Alternatively, if Valverde was still part of the midfield, Real were more than comfortable sitting deep and extremely narrow at times, opening up the wings, as long as they prevented the entry into these dangerous players between the lines, because when the ball did go wide, they had confidence in their fullbacks to then move out to cover and the rest of the back four to shift across. Here we see just how compact Real Madrid were willing to be at times, to prevent City getting between the lines easily. But City were still looking for solutions, and as we just discussed, only having 1v1s out wide at times could be a weakness, so what we began to see was City looking to overload the fullbacks, as Akanji could move higher up at times, but for the most part, it was Camavinga that they were targeting. This could be through Bernardo initially receiving, and rather than making the underlapping run, De Bruyne could make the run on the outside to potentially receive and cross. However, Vinicius was often slow to track back after Real Madrid had been attacking, and Guardiola, where he usually likes to keep Walker deep, was willing to take the risk of having him overlap down the right hand side at times to create that 2 versus 1 against Camavinga, and this did cause issues for Real Madrid at times. However, with Stones being a part of the midfield, this would leave City extremely vulnerable during the defensive phase, as the left-hand side was now exposed, meaning that if Vinicius was able to receive the first pass on the transition, he was now running at a centre-back, with his partner in crime Benzema ready to support him. But it was a risk that City had to take. But for the most part, by affecting City's build-up shape, Real Madrid were able to keep City to low percentage opportunities. But what did Madrid do when they were on the ball? In open play and from goal kicks, City were looking to defend in a 4-4-2 like they usually do, with De Bruyne joining Haaland and the rest of the midfield shifting across so that the shape looked like this. And this was a problem both from goal kicks as well as open play. From goal kicks, Rudiger and Alaba would provide the passing outlets to Courtois, with Haaland and De Bruyne each looking to pick up one of the centre-backs. What this would mean was that Real Madrid would look to work it to their fullback, who would be under immediate pressure from the City winger. However, Real Madrid still had the 3 versus 2 advantage in the midfield that City at times did not adapt to that well, which would mean that the deepest pivot, if Haaland for example wasn't able to cover, would then be able to receive the pass inside, and had effectively taken 3 City men out of the game, allowing Real Madrid to then move up the pitch. We see just that here, with Haaland on Rudiger, De Bruyne was on Alaba, and Grealish is drawn to Camavinga, and Grealish is drawn to Carvajal. The double pivot is outnumbered, meaning that Toni Kroos can easily receive the pass infield, and now Real can play upfield. In open play, though they kept that 4-4-2, City's defensive organisation was slightly different, as rather than pressing with both centre-backs as they did on the goal kick, now they look to piston press, with only one man pressing at a time and the other looking to cover Toni Kroos, although we did see them occasionally go with the front two. So more and more we saw Toni Kroos join the backline so that they always had that initial 3 versus 2 advantage, as well as the 2 versus 2 in the midfield, where Modric and Valverde are both secure enough in possession to receive under pressure. However, rather than always playing through the centre of the pitch, they could look to overload the left-hand side in the build-up, and this was through Camavinga and Modric, who could often rotate positions, Vinicius and Benzema often dropping into this region, as well as Valverde moving in. This meant that they had the opportunity down the left-hand side to build with shorter passes and find combinations between the lines, simply due to having more men in that region. Alternatively, this would draw City across the pitch, and Rodrigo and Carvajal were quite interchangeable, with one being willing to move infield and the other staying wide, or both staying wide, meaning on more than one occasion they had the chance to switch the play and then attack City's left-hand side. Kroos dropping into the backline, and Real Madrid are committing plenty of numbers over to the left-hand side, whilst Rodrigo and Carvajal on the opposite side provide the opportunity for the switch if needed. However, much like City, Real Madrid struggled to create clear-cut chances. And this was one of those matches where the sides were pretty well matched tactically, and it took the individual brilliance of brilliant players to make the difference. The game is finally poised, and we're set for an explosive second leg, especially with away goals not counting anymore. But leave your predictions for next week's match down below. For the managerial tactical scores, I felt like both sides were set up very well, and although they cancelled each other out, there were still interesting tactical patterns going on, meaning both managers earn a 7. But what do you think? Drop it down below, and anything else you noticed, as always, not every tactic could be covered.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.